was standing outside my own apartment with my life in garbage bags and boxes scattered on the concrete, 8 months pregnant, reading a note taped to the door that said, "I know the baby isn't mine. You're a liar." My hands were shaking, not from the cold. It was August in Wisconsin, pushing 90 degrees, and I was sweating through my maternity shirt. I was shaking because I couldn't process what I was looking at. My clothes, my books, my laptop, the little onesies we'd bought together for the baby, all of it dumped outside like trash. The locks had been changed. I knew because I'd already tried my key 3 times, and each time it just scraped against metal that didn't recognize it anymore. My husband had thrown me out, and I had no idea why. Well, that's not true. I knew why, according to the note. He thought I'd cheated. He thought the baby wasn't his, but I didn't know how he'd gotten that idea, or why he believed it, or why he wouldn't answer his phone. I called him again, straight to voicemail. Again, let me back up. 6 months before that moment, I was living the most boring life imaginable in Chicago. Same job selling furniture to people who couldn't decide between beige and taupe. Same studio apartment with a radiator that clanked all night. Same route to work every morning. Same coffee order, same lunch spot. I was 26 and felt like I was 50. Like my life had been laminated and I'd forgotten to protest. My college roommate had moved to this tiny lake town in Wisconsin for a teaching job and kept begging me to visit. "You need a break," she said over the phone for the 100th time. "You're going to have a breakdown if you keep living like this. Just come for a week, clear your head, stare at some water. It'll be good for you." So I did. I showed up on a Friday afternoon with a duffel bag and 0 expectations, ready to sit on a couch and do absolutely nothing for 7 days. The first night, we sat on her balcony drinking cheap wine that tasted like disappointment, and she pointed to the apartment next door. "That's my neighbor," she said, trying to sound casual and failing. "He's single. You're not allowed to fall for him because he's got that face that makes women do stupid things." I laughed. "I'm not here to meet anyone. I'm here to decompress." "Sure," she said, smirking. "That's what they all say before they do something dumb." "I'm serious. I need a break from people. Not more people." "We'll see." Then he walked out to take his trash to the dumpster, tall, dark hair that looked like he'd run his hands through it a few too many times, wearing a t-shirt and jeans like he'd just rolled out of bed, which, given that it was 8 p.m., was concerning. Or endearing. I couldn't decide. He waved at Amy. "Hey, neighbor." "Hey," she called back. Then she pointed at me. "This is my friend from college. She's visiting for the week." He looked at me. Really looked at me. Not the polite up and down you give strangers, but the kind of look that makes you suddenly aware of the fact that you're wearing leggings with a hole in the knee and a shirt you've owned since sophomore year. "Cool," he said. "I'm Jake. You guys want to walk around the lake later? I usually go around 7. Could use the company." I should have said no. I should have stayed on that balcony and kept drinking wine and complaining about my job. But Amy said yes for both of us before I could open my mouth, and by 7:15 we were walking along the water, and Jake was asking me about my job, my city, what I like to do for fun. Normal questions. But the way he asked made it feel like he actually cared about the answers, like he was filing them away somewhere for later use. "So, furniture sales," he said. "That's got to be interesting." "It's not," I said. "It's the opposite of interesting. It's people spending 3 hours deciding between 2 identical couches." He laughed. "Sounds like hell." "It is. But it pays rent." "Fair enough. What would you rather be doing?" Nobody had asked me that in years. "I don't know. Something that doesn't make me want to walk into traffic every morning." "Low bar." "Yeah, I'm working on it." At one point, Amy made up some excuse about needing to grab something from the drugstore and disappeared, leaving us alone on the path. We kept walking. The sun was setting, turning the lake orange and pink and purple like someone had spilled paint across the sky. Jake said, "This is my favorite time of day. Everything just slows down, like the world takes a breath." "Yeah," I said, looking at the water. "It's nice. I don't get this in Chicago." "No? Not really. Everything's concrete and noise." "You should move." "Maybe, if I ever figure out where." We stopped on a small dock. He turned to me, hands in his pockets, looking nervous for the first time since we'd started walking. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. How long are you staying?" "Just a week. I have to be back at work Monday." He nodded, looked like he was doing math in his head, then said, "That's too bad." "Why?" "Because I'd like more than a week to get to know you." Then he kissed me, not aggressive, not assuming, just soft and careful, like he was testing to see if I'd kiss him back. I did. That was supposed to be it, a vacation thing. But when I got on the bus to go home a week later, he texted me before I even got to the first stop. "I already miss you." We started texting every day, then calling every night. The kind of calls where you talk for 3 hours about nothing and everything. Then I went back to visit. Then he came to Chicago. Then we were buying bus tickets every other weekend, on counting down the days until we could see each other again. It was exhausting and wonderful and completely unsustainable. Around the 1-year mark, I saw a job posting for a position in his town. I sent it to him as a joke. "Should I apply?" He called me immediately. "Yes. Are you serious?" "Yes." I got the job. Quit my apartment, packed everything I owned into boxes, and moved to Wisconsin to be with a guy I'd known for a year. My mom thought I was insane. "What if it doesn't work out?" she asked. "Then I'll move back," I said, "but I have to try." He picked me up at the bus station, grabbed my heaviest suitcase without asking, and kissed me in front of everyone. "We're done with weekends," he said. "This is it." For a while, it was perfect. We moved in together into his apartment, which was bigger than my studio, but not by much. He proposed 3 months later in our kitchen while we were eating leftover pizza straight from the box because neither of us wanted to do dishes. No ring yet, just him putting down his slice and saying, "Hey, so, I want to marry you. Like soon. Will you marry you?" I said yes before he even finished the sentence. We were both laughing, and he was trying to wipe pizza grease off his hands so he could hug me properly, and it was perfect. Then I met his mother. She showed up the next day, didn't call first. Just let herself in with her own key that I didn't know she had. "I had your father make me a copy years ago," she said, walking straight to our kitchen like she owned the place. "I'll just put this in the fridge. You two don't eat enough vegetables." She was holding a casserole dish. I was standing in the living room in pajamas, hair in a bun, trying to process the fact that my future mother-in-law had just walked into our apartment unannounced. "Mom," Jake said, coming out of the bedroom, "you could have called." "Why? You're my son. I don't need an appointment." She looked at me. "You must be the fiancé. I'm Linda. It's nice to finally meet you properly." "Nice to meet you too," I said, very aware of the fact that I was not wearing a bra. "Well," she said, opening our fridge and rearranging things to make room for her casserole. "I see you still haven't learned how to organize a refrigerator. Condiments go on the door, Jake. Not on the top shelf." "Mom, and what's this?" She pulled out a yogurt that was maybe 3 days past its expiration date. "You're eating this? You're going to get food poisoning." She threw it away without asking. At first, I thought it was sweet. She cared. She was involved. Probably a bit too involved, but that was normal for some families, right? But then she started showing up every day, sometimes twice a day, rearranging our kitchen, commenting on the way I folded laundry, suggesting we needed better furniture, nicer curtains, a different car. "This apartment is fine for 2 college kids," she said one day, running her finger along our coffee table like she was checking for dust. "But for a married couple, you need something better. You need a real home." "We like it here," I said. "For now," she said, in a tone that suggested I was being naive. The couch incident was the first red flag I couldn't ignore. We'd spent weeks researching online, reading reviews, comparing prices. We finally picked one out. Simple, comfortable, affordable. It was perfect for us. When Linda found out we were going to the furniture store to buy it, she insisted on coming along. "I want to make sure you get something that'll last," she said. "You don't know what to look for. You'll end up with something cheap that falls apart in a year." Jake said it was fine, that we'd already decided, but she showed up at the store anyway. She walked straight past the couch we wanted and sat down on this massive, stiff thing that looked like it belonged in a hotel lobby or a doctor's waiting room. "This is what you need," she said, patting the armrest. "Our equality. Real wood frame. This'll last 20 years. Not one of those cheap sofas with particle board that'll sag and break." I said, "We really like the other one. It's more our style." She made this little noise, this disapproving hum that said everything without saying anything. Jake looked at me, then at her, then back at the couch she was sitting on. "I don't know," he said slowly. "Maybe she's got a point. Maybe we should go with something more durable." "But we already decided," I said. "I know, but..." He looked at his mom. "This one is really nice." We bought her couch, spent twice what we'd budgeted. I told myself it didn't matter. It was just a couch. We'd be sitting on it, not framing it, but it wasn't just a couch. It was the wedding venue. She wanted a church. We wanted the lake. She called a church and put down a deposit without asking us, then told us a week later like it was already decided. "I got you June 15th, she said. "Perfect timing. The church does beautiful weddings." "We wanted to get married by the lake," I said. "The lake?" She laughed like I told a joke. "Honey, you can't have a real wedding at a lake. What about rain? What about bugs? What about your grandmother? She can't walk on grass." "She's been dead for 5 years, Jake said quietly. Linda ignored him. "A church is proper. It's traditional. It's what people expect." I looked at Jake. He looked at the floor. I dug my heels in. I told him I couldn't go through with a wedding that didn't feel like ours, that I'd already compromised on the couch and the curtains and 100 other little things, and I needed this one thing to be what we wanted. To his credit, he talked to her. It took 3 conversations and a lot of tears on her part, but we got our lake wedding. She still showed up early on the day of, bossed around the photographer, rearranged the flowers, and told the DJ to turn down the music because it was too loud, and people were trying to have conversations. Our honeymoon was 2 days at a cabin 2 hours away. Nothing fancy, just us, some hiking trails, and a lot of sleep. She called 5 times the first day, to make sure we got there okay, to remind Jake to take his allergy medication, to ask if we needed her to bring us anything. 6 months after the wedding, she lost her job. The store she worked at closed. She called my husband in tears, and before I could even process what was happening, he told her we'd cover her rent until she found something new. I understood. She was his mom. She needed help. But weeks turned into months, and every job interview she went to somehow wasn't good enough. The pay was too low. The hours were too long. The manager was rude. There was always a reason. Meanwhile, our savings account was draining. I was working full-time in sales, and my husband was doing IT work from home, but we were barely covering our own bills, plus hers. Then I got pregnant. He cried when I told him. Happy tears. He hugged me and said everything was going to change, that we were going to be a family, that he couldn't wait. By the 8th month, I'd had to cut back to part-time because the pregnancy was rough. I was exhausted all the time. My feet were swollen, and I could barely stand for more than an hour. And my paycheck dropped to almost nothing. We sat down one night and went through our finances. It was bad. We couldn't keep paying his mom's rent and also prepare for a baby. "We need to talk to her," I said. He looked miserable. "She's going to be upset." "I know, but we don't have a choice. We invited her over for lunch the following Sunday. I made her favorite pasta. We ate. We made small talk. Then I brought it up. We've been looking at our finances, I said, trying to sound gentle. And with the baby coming and my hours cut, we're not going to be able to keep covering your rent. We think it might be time for you to look at other options. Maybe a smaller place or a roommate or... She cut me off. Are you serious right now? She looked at my husband. You're going to let her talk to me like this? Mom, it's not... I gave up everything for you, she said, her voice rising. I raised you alone. I worked 2 jobs. And now when I need help for the first time in my life, you're going to abandon me because she says so? It's not abandoning you, I said. We just can't afford... You can't afford me, but you can afford a baby? She stood up. This is unbelievable. I see what's happening here. She's pushing me out. She's always wanted to push me out. She left. Slammed the door so hard the pictures on the wall rattled. My husband didn't say anything. He just sat there, staring at his plate. For the next week, his mom didn't call. Didn't text. Radio silence. I thought maybe she was cooling off. Maybe she was thinking it over and would come back ready to have a real conversation. I was wrong. I had a prenatal checkup on a Thursday afternoon. My husband said he had a work call and couldn't come with me. No big deal. I went alone, got checked out. Everything was fine. The baby was healthy. I was healthy. When I got back to our apartment, I turned the corner and saw everything I owned sitting outside the door. Suitcases, boxes, trash bags. Our neighbor was standing on her porch, staring. I walked up to the door and saw the note. I know the baby isn't mine. You're a liar. I don't want you in my home anymore. You have until tonight to get your things or I'm throwing them away. I tried my key. It didn't work. I stood there, 8 months pregnant, in 90-degree heat, and I couldn't breathe. My neighbor came over. What happened? I looked at her. He thinks I cheated on him. She helped me carry some of my stuff into her apartment. I sat on her couch and pulled out my phone. My husband had sent me a message, a long one. He said his mom had been noticing things. Me coming home late. Me on my phone, turning the screen away when he walked into the room. A package that arrived when he wasn't home. Then, he sent a photo. It was me, standing in our hallway talking to a guy from my office. He'd dropped off some files I needed to review because I was working from home that week. We were standing close because the hallway was narrow. That was it. That was the evidence. His mom had taken the photo, had shown it to him, had convinced him I was cheating. I called him. Voicemail. I texted him. That's my coworker. He dropped off work files. I can prove it. Please just talk to me. No response. I called again. Voicemail. I texted him proof, screenshots of work emails, my coworker's LinkedIn showing he was married with 3 kids, a photo of the files sitting on our kitchen counter. Nothing. My neighbor let me sleep on her couch that night. I didn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling the baby kick, wondering how my life had fallen apart in the span of 6 hours. The next morning, I called my mom. I tried to sound calm, but the second I heard her voice, I lost it. She drove up that same day. Helped me find a small apartment across town. My parents covered the deposit. I kept texting my husband. I'm at this address. The baby's fine. Please just talk to me. Please. He never responded. 2 weeks later, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was his lawyer. Divorce papers were on the way. I went into labor 3 weeks after that. My mom was with me. She held my hand, told me to breathe, cut the cord when the nurses asked if anyone wanted to. When they put my baby in my arms, he looked exactly like his father. Same nose, same mouth. I took a picture and sent it to my ex-husband. This is your son. We can do a paternity test whenever you want. I have nothing to hide. He didn't respond. A week later, the divorce papers arrived. He wasn't asking for custody, wasn't asking for visitation. He'd signed away all parental rights. His name wasn't on the birth certificate. My lawyer said I could fight it, force a paternity test, go after child support. I said no, I didn't have the energy. I needed to focus on my son. The divorce was finalized in 3 months. The first year was brutal. I was working part-time, barely sleeping, trying to keep my head above water. My mom stayed with me for 2 months. My dad helped with bills. Friends dropped off meals. I heard through the grapevine that my ex-husband had a new girlfriend. Then that she'd moved in. Then, barely a year after our divorce, that they were engaged. I also heard his mom loved her. Loved that she was calm, that she understood family, that she wasn't like me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to show up at their door and tell them both what they'd done. But I didn't. I stayed home, took care of my son, and tried to build a life. When my son was 4, I went to a work conference. I was standing by the coffee table, exhausted, when a guy walked up and made a joke about how the free coffee was the only reason anyone actually showed up to these things. I laughed. We started talking. He was kind, calm, steady. I told him early on that I had a son. He didn't flinch. When he came to visit a month later, my son liked him immediately. I tried to ruin it. I picked fights. I pulled away when things got too serious. But he stayed. 3 years later, we got married at the courthouse. My son was 7, wore a tiny suit, took his job as ring bearer very seriously. A year after that, my new husband asked if he could adopt my son. We went through the legal process. My ex-husband had to be notified. He signed the papers without contest. The judge asked my son how he felt about it. My son said, I want the same last name as my dad. Life was good, quiet, normal. Then, when my son was 9, my ex-husband came back. He showed up at my door one afternoon. He looked older, thinner, tired. Can we talk? He asked. I almost said no, but I let him in. He told me his mom had died, cancer. And before she died, she'd confessed. She'd lied about me, made up the cheating story, twisted the photo, all because she was afraid of losing him. I'm sorry, he said, crying. I lost everything because of her. I lost you. I lost my son. I need to make this right. I felt bad for him for a second. Then he said, I want to meet him. I want to be his dad. And that second of sympathy evaporated. No, I said. He has a dad, legally and emotionally. You signed away your rights. You don't get to come back now. He got angry, said biology mattered, said I'd stolen his son, said I'd moved on too easily. I told him to leave. He didn't. He started showing up everywhere, at the park, at our house, sending messages from different numbers. One Saturday, he walked right up to my son at the playground and said, Hey buddy, I'm your real dad. My son looked terrified. I called the police. That night, he stood in our yard, screaming my name, screaming my son's name, saying we couldn't erase him. The cops arrested him. I filed a restraining order. He violated it. Showed up at my son's school. He went to jail. We moved. Different state. Fresh start. 2 years later, my old neighbor called. He'd been released. Was living a few hours from our old town, keeping to himself. I hung up and looked at my son's drawing on the fridge. 3 stick figures holding hands. He's 12 now. One day, we'll tell him the whole story. But for now, he's happy. He has a mom and a dad who show up, who love him. Sometimes I think about the life I could have had if my ex-husband's mom had just been honest. If she'd let go. But that's not what happened. He made his choices. I made mine. And sitting here, watching my son draw another picture of our family of 3, I know I chose right.